Thank you. Good morning. Are you ready? Okay, good. Good morning. Hello. I'm Lauren Hall, the CEO of First Things First.
Good morning. I'm James Woods, the Community Outreach Specialist for First Things First.
They're just going to cut us on.
Oh.
That's the opposite. Turn us on. And I am Mitchell Qualls. I'm the Vice President of Operations at First Things First.
And we are here today presenting on behalf of the Thread Collaborative. Did you know there are over 2,400 nonprofits across Hamilton, Ray, and Bradley County, not including religious and educational institutions? That is a lot of resources. So now, this is what I want you to do. I want you to turn to the person next to you, and I want you to state whether or not you think that is a positive or a negative for the families looking for resources in those communities. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to talk about it. Go. All right, okay. There's a lot of conversation. Now here's what you're gonna do. If you think that was a positive, put your thumb up in the air with a thumbs up. If you think it's a negative, give me a thumbs down. And if you think it was a maybe, give us a maybe. Okay, do you see how many diverse opinions there are in this room right now? Now imagine being a family in poverty and trying to find resources. How do you think that could make you feel?
I'd like to speak to those problems as someone who's lived in poverty, subsidized housing, insurance, and food stamps from the state. Families in poverty have less support system. Growing up, I have a very tight-knit family, but no one was pushing me to do better. I have a lack of resources. It's really the fact that resources are out of the world. When you're in survival mode, you live day to day. It's not really your capacity to think about accessing anything else. Feeling overwhelmed and where to start. It's also feeling embarrassed, ashamed, fearful. It takes a lot of courage to ask for help. And to think about having to do those in numerous times, in numerous locations, it makes you want to give up, shut down, and feel hopeless. Families in poverty have increased amount of stress, which research shows decrease your ability to make decisions. We moved from Florida a lot. The stress of moving, the lack of money and resources contributed to me not graduating from high school. It's difficult to focus on education when you and your family are focused on survival.
And with these problems in mind, the Thread Collaborative was formed and we came together. And our shared vision is to provide an all-encompassing support system to families in need and break generational cycles of financial, emotional, mental, and relational poverty. The question is how? How many of you have got one of these? Hold it up in the air. Or raise your hand if you got one. Everybody in this room's got a cell phone. Well, did you know that 97% of people living in poverty have these? 85% of people in poverty have smartphones. So what if we could leverage the device that we're all dependent on to help them gain independence?
Introducing Thread, a collaborative network on a digital platform. Now, before we dig into the depths of Thread, let me tell you where this idea came from. When COVID hit, y'all remember COVID? Anybody forget about it? Nope, okay. Well, you know, everyone had to pivot their services, and we were super nervous about what that was gonna look like, especially for families in poverty. We thought, oh my goodness, as probably many of you in this room, when we go digital and we start trying to do digital programming, what does that mean for those families? Well, here's what we found out. We found out that it was actually easier for families, low-income families, to access our services and many of the services in our collaborative. Why? Because they didn't have to worry about transportation to an office. They didn't have to worry about their job schedule. They didn't have to worry about childcare. We were flexible with their schedule. We could be there in an instant, and we worked with them. So we thought, what if we could do something, when we heard about this TANF opportunity, we thought, what if we could create something that's never been done before and create a collaborative that would provide a holistic approach, not only in the hands of the organizations involved, but in the hands of the participants who need the resources. So that's where Thread was born. So let's dig into it a little bit. There's 4 pieces to Thread. The first is that it is a database and referral system.
It's an interactive network for the family or the individual to see what's available to them, speak directly with representatives from those organizations. They can set appointments, they can set reminders, as well as select community guides, which are going to be a key piece of this. And those guides provide them direction on their journey towards self-sufficiency.
Third, it's an in-depth reporting system that would track an individual or family's progress, as well as goals or independent measurables set for them along the way.
And fourth, it has a very unique assessment tool that measures an individual's biological temperament, and it provides insights into how they address problems, process information, manage change, and face risks. This will be super helpful as they are pursuing further education, jobs, improving their relational and mental health, and ultimately the journey towards self-sufficiency.
So Thread is not only the name of the platform, it's the ethos by which our collaboration exists. We'll thread our services together to provide the support to individuals that they need where they're at that moment, no matter which one of our collaborative organizations that they're working with. And we'll also assist them in growing their capacity so that they can thread their way through obstacles and challenges that they're going to face while they're overcoming poverty.
The Thread Collaborative includes 13 organizations already serving low-income families. We recognize that we have a lot of organizations that offer a lot of services. This can be overwhelming for some families in poverty. Each individual has needs. It's a different timeline, has different abilities, but yet there's another program. While we recognize that there's need for programs, we have so many already set up in our area. How do we utilize what's already available to families with a high-tech, high-touch approach?
Boom, I'm going to jump off that high-tech, high-touch approach, James. So each organization within the Thread Collaborative will hire community guides, as Mitchell mentioned earlier, and they will be the key relationship for each family moving towards self-sufficiency on the platform. The community guide will be responsible for assessing the family's needs to move towards self-sufficiency using a digital version of the Arizona Self-Sufficiency Matrix. They will then create an action plan and guide the family through this action plan step by step, linking them to different resources within the Thread Collaborative. The community guides will be trained in coaching techniques, trauma-informed care, and be well-versed in the biological temperament assessment housed on Thread. The family and the community guide will communicate directly through the Thread platform via text, phone call, video chat, or email. And for some participants and through certain organizations in the collaborative, the community guide will also provide in-home check-ins. We will always encourage face-to-face meetings, and we believe that is very important, but when it is convenient for the families and the individuals and when they feel comfortable doing so.
By using the Thread platform and assigning each individual to a community guide, we hope to make your journey towards self-sufficiency go from this to this. Here's a little of my story. I was introduced to First Things First from CSPED, which is a child support program that helps non-custodial parents get employed, but I was already employed. First thing first, the woman told me that I was going to get a house, which I was already excited about. But then I got there and I realized it was more than the housing, but I decided to stay and learn. I met a guy, Reggie Madison. We built a relationship and I trusted him. He was my unofficial community guy. Through him, the trust, I was able to build with key relationships with judges, lawyers, financial advisors, mental health counselors, and help me get a higher paying job. I don't know what my journey with self-sufficiency will be with the same, but I'm here today working for First Things First. My dream job, being more stable financially, mentally, and emotionally, I've never been. And I'm able to give back. And now I'm helping other men and other couples move forward and build relationships. After all this, the most important thing is moving forward to self-sufficiency. The Thread program will make this possible for everyone involved.
So who will use this platform? We anticipate serving approximately 5,200 adults that represent 4,500 households and over 11,250 children. And these are spread across the area that our collaborative organization currently serves, which is Ray County, Hamilton, and Bradley counties. And we've divided the target audiences into 4 groups, which are low-income families in the rural areas of northern Hamilton and Ray County, low-income Spanish-speaking families in urban environments in Hamilton, low-income African-American families in urban environments in Hamilton, and low-income families in rural areas of eastern Hamilton and Bradley County.
So let's talk about outcomes. What do we expect the Thread platform to actually accomplish? Well, as a collaborative, we hold tight to Dr. Ruby Payne. Are y'all familiar with Dr. Ruby Payne? Of course, yes, I figured you would be, Clarence. Dr. Ruby Payne's 4 reasons that one leaves poverty. And in her book, The Framework of Understanding Poverty, she says, the 4 reasons are, it's too painful to stay, a vision or goal, a key relationship, or a special talent or skill. Using this statement as a guide, we are allowing the feeding for the Thread platform to come directly from the nonprofits and agencies who are offering help to those who have already reached out because it's too painful to stay in poverty and they are feeling the effects of poverty firsthand. Once individuals are in the platform, they will be able to establish visions and goals while building that key relationship with their community guide. And the collaborative efforts of all the organizations on the platform, they will be able to identify and develop their unique talents, skills, and passions, perhaps for the very first time. Our outcomes are separated into short, medium, and long, or learning, learning, action, and conditions. I want to focus on the long or conditional outcomes. We are confident that over the 3-year period, we will decrease the number of families within the population we're serving. We will decrease the number of families receiving TANF benefits by a minimum of 30%, decrease the unemployment rate by a minimum of 30%, increase the number of 2-parent households by a minimum of 20%, increase the marriage rate by a minimum of 25%, and overall, we want to establish a 60% awareness and trust for core resources available in the community for TANF-eligible families.
When it comes to the TANF purposes, our organization's focused on the 2nd and the 4th of the TANF purposes, but through the collaboration that exists, we'll also be impacting the 1st and the 3rd, thereby hitting all 4 of the purposes. And when it comes to the outcomes, our organization is focused on decreasing psychological distress and increasing family engagement, but again, through the collaborative, we'll also be increasing economic stability and empowering parents. So, how will we utilize the funds? That's always a big question. Well, as we've seen on some other slides yesterday while we were here, the majority of the funds are going straight to the collaborative. That's the darkest color that you see there. And these are the organizations that have been part of the planning team that are committed to this program. We recognize that a need of individuals and families in poverty is relationship capital. That's what they really need is help to get out of where they're at. And so we feel like our strength in this is by leveraging the relationships that we have with nonprofits in our area to help them better serve and help them have better access to the people there. And each collaborator that's represented will employ their own community guides that will help people and navigate people to become the hero in their own story. And then as far as sustainability beyond the 3 years, we've had those discussions as a collaborative. Once this is built, it will be affordable to maintain after the 3-year funding cycle is over. Also, it can be utilized in other regions beyond just ours. There's an opportunity to license this out to other regions, and we've had that discussion with the software company that's going to develop it for us. And our collaborators are committed to continuing this work beyond the funding cycle.
So as you can see, it's not just about helping an individual or a family, it's also about helping to build a community of others who, along this journey, will be able to give back. And a part of the Thread platform is that once someone has reached self-sufficiency and they are more independent, they would stay a part of the platform, and that's where we would build a community. They would then be labeled as a mentor or collaborator in and of themselves, and as new people are brought into the platform, they could assist them along their own journey. James, take it away.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, about my life, in a real quick summary. I never dreamed that I'll be doing this. I just started working for First Things First July of last year. I was a father of 6. I'm a married man now. I'm going to school. Now I'm volunteering at the jail that I was working at, doing time for. And through the First Things First, here I am standing in front of you guys. Blessed, happy, and hungry to give you guys more. It's not just a thread that we're talking about. We're talking about a lifestyle, a platform that we're trying to give to the world. I'm standing up here as a man just trying to give back to everybody that thinks they can't make it. They don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know where they're gonna go. So you guys are seeing my story. It was scripted, but I talked to God this morning. And he put this on my heart to tell you guys that thank you for what you guys gonna do and what we're gonna do as a collaborative team. Thank you guys, and we're open for questions.
James, just real quick before I get to my question, it wasn't due to first things first. It was due to you. First things first created the enabling conditions, but it was due to you. Okay? Don't ever forget that. So, what I didn't see in the budget is where's the cost for building the application?
So the cost for building the application it's also in that professional fees, grants, and awards because we identified them as a contract. And the cost for that's broken out in our proposal over a 3-year time period, it's just around $900,000. And that's for building it, implementing it, maintaining it, and making adjustments throughout those 3 years, as well as hosting it.
Okay.
Hey, thank you for being here. I have a question about the temperament assessment. So is that different from a skills assessment, one, and is that something that you all are building, or are you using a pre-existing skills or temperament assessment?
You did the research this morning, you do it.
So we are using a pre-existing one. Our organization actually has a partnership with a company called Ministry Insights, which is based in North Carolina. A gentleman by the name of Rodney Cox developed that assessment in association with TTI, which is the company that built the DISC assessment. So he worked with them, and they developed that assessment. I actually had that pulled up because we were anticipating that. And so they had built it, and he actually built it to be used as a leadership assessment, marriage, also parenting. And so it's really to look at what someone's temperaments are and gauge those 4 things. As opposed to DISC, which goes up and down, they turned it horizontal, which puts it on a different spectrum. So it's not really about a high and a low. It's just where you fall on that spectrum. And then also through that assessment, it gives a wealth of feedback to the person to give them information about how they're, just how they are. So we are partnered. Our organization is already using this in marriages. So we use this.
So that may have just answered my question, but to what end? So the individual has all of this information about their temperament. With what do they do with that information?
Can I take that?
Go for it.
Okay. So what we do right now when we use it with married couples is we decide there's like a 17-page report that can come out of this assessment. Obviously, that would make someone's head explode, right? But the key pieces of that report is there's a narrative. It's about 3 paragraphs that comes out, and it says, like, my name's Lauren, so it's third person, and it would say, Lauren typically likes to be in the front of the room. Lauren likes to have attention, but Lauren also struggles with not saying no and setting boundaries. So it gives you a third party and a third person narrative to be able to understand yourself a little bit better and have that conversation with a community guide by your side. We would never ask anyone to do this without their community guide holding their hand and walking them through it. And the community guides will be trained to say, another piece of the report is you can learn how you typically take in information. So if someone speaks to you and they say, you should go do this. Well, let's say processing information or facing risk, you struggle in some of those areas. Like, you're not someone who's okay with facing risk. If someone tells you should go do something and that feels risky to you, you're going to be very adverse to it. You're not going to want to do it. So it gives a community guide an opportunity to say, okay, this person, their biological temperament says they don't really like to face risk, and I'm about to ask them to face a huge risk. So how can I coach them through this, and how can I realistically set expectations and goals for them? So it's a way for them to really get to know each other better on both ends of the spectrum. You're welcome.
That partly gets to my question. So the sense here is that anyone who has an account on this app has the community guide.
Yes.
Is it possible, is it advisable that people use this app and not have that relationship with the community guide?
No, and that is exactly why we don't want to advertise Thread itself. It's not going to be an app that you can just go download. If you become part of Thread, it's because you've been given a community guide through a collaborative partner in our Thread organization, and they have helped you set up your profile. I want to add one more thing to that you didn't ask, but I think it's important, and that is it's not just an app. It can be a website or it can be an app, but any communication that's within the app could just go straight to the participant's cell phone as a text message or a phone call. It would still be logged within the app, so the collaborator and the organizations within the collaborative could see there's communication going on here, here's the communication that's happening, but the person themselves would just get a text message just like any other ordinary day, if that makes sense.
How do you get a community guide?
So the community guides will be hired by the individual. Will you go back to that? Yeah.
The one with, oh, I went the wrong
All
way.
the people.
We're going. There you go.
So these are all the organizations within our collaborative, and each organization is going to hire community guides. We set a number that a community guide can't have more than 30. That's the maximum people on their caseload. So if anyone goes to any of these organizations, they would automatically be given a community guide who would establish their TANF eligibility and enroll them into the Thread platform. You're doing great. Yes. Hey.
You chose Hamilton, Bradley, and Ray counties. Just out of curiosity,
Yeah.
why those 3 counties?
So those are just counties that our collaborators already serve people through.
Okay.
And also Hamilton and Bradley are, well, actually Ray is at risk.
Yes.
So yes, and that is a county we know needs a little bit more attention as well. But it's a county that, like, through Northside Neighborhood House and even First Things First, we've served a lot of individuals through that county. So we knew that that would be one that we wanted to focus on.
Are you looking to expand into other counties in that area?
Yeah, not during the 3 years, but
Yeah.
hopefully after that.
And my next question is, and it doesn't have anything related to the geographical region, but
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
the conditional percentages that you had shared with us, how did you come up with those percentages?
So to be honest, that came from what First Things First has been. Are you talking about the long?
Additional, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So those are the percentages. When First Things First started back in 1997, we had 3 main goals, and so this is how we establish our goals today. Our 3 main goals were to decrease divorce, decrease out-of-wedlock pregnancy, and increase father involvement. And what we said was that we were going to do all of that by 30% within 3 years across Hamilton County. Well, what we learned is it's really hard to do that because in 3 years, because there's an educational proponent, there's an awareness proponent, there's a collaborative component, and the measurement of that needs to be off of the people you're serving, not based off of like census data coming in through the state as a whole, right? Mm-hmm. So when we went back and we looked at what we've done over the course of 3 years, those are the minimums that we've been able to achieve in the same type of population that we're currently looking at serving.
Okay, so
Based
the
off-
percentages came from historical data that you all have had since, I mean, like a couple years ago in 1997?
Yeah, 25 years. It is what it
years
is. Yeah.
Need to make sure that when you talk about the community guides coming from the individual organizations. I want to make sure that that community guide would be working for the consumer, not the organization.
Absolutely. So that's why, Clarence, that's such a good point. So at First Things First, we have a VP of Community Relations. It actually is Reggie Madison, who was James's unofficial community guide and has been doing this community guide work for, 10 years, something like that. Anyway, so he's going to be the head of all the community guides, and he's going to be the person that the community guides will go to if they have issues. He will meet with them on a weekly basis, and he will make sure that if they have anything, if they're missing anything, he's their man. And he's also going to be the go-between with some of the organizations. Another thing that we made sure was that 80% of the community guide's time needs to be poured into their caseload. 20% could go into helping, you know, if they need to answer a phone or something for the organization they're in, that's okay. But if it's more than 20%, they need to let Reggie know, because that's part of the contract of hiring a community guide under these organizations. Thank you so much.